Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit, and we're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we generally look at one or another of the lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the Daily Office Lectionary. And today is Wednesday, and I had a series of pre-recorded messages that I put together before my surgery last week, and so now we're back to fresh messages, and thank you all for your prayers. My surgery recovery is going remarkably well, and in fact, not only have I not missed a service here at St. John's, but by God's grace, the doctor has cleared me to begin some exercise again tomorrow. So I'm very excited about that, God willing, to be able to get back towards getting ready for the rowing season that's upcoming on the water. So today I thought we'd take a look at the lesson that's assigned for evening prayer from St. Mark's Gospel. Now, the lesson that's assigned is chapter 12, verses 38 through 44. It's the end of the chapter. However, I do want to then go into the beginning of the 13th chapter, which is actually assigned for tomorrow. And I want to talk about why it is I want to do that. We'll get there. So Mark chapter 12, beginning at verse 38. And Jesus said unto them in his doctrine, Beware of the scribes, which love to go in long clothing, and love salutations in the marketplaces, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and the uppermost rooms at feasts, which devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. These shall receive greater damnation. And Jesus sat over against the treasury, and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury, and that many that were rich cast in much. And there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites, which make a farthing. And he called unto him his disciples, and saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast more in than all they which have cast into the treasury. For they all did cast in of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. Okay, so that's where the lesson assigned for today stops. So let's talk about that. And then I want to hit you with something interesting after that. So here, of course, we have this teaching about Jesus talking about a warning against the religious leaders of the day. And, you know, these warnings run up against today, too. I know there's a very popular Netflix series right now about the downfall of a very popular church that had all sorts of branches around the country, one of these independent evangelical churches. And because of the greed of the leadership and other improprieties, that little grouping of churches is now falling apart and coming under great scrutiny. But, you know, it's a hazard for those of us in a much more Catholic tradition as well, that we, you know, Father Kelly likes to dress up and be up front, and you know, we get the warning, right? God forbid that I do that to build me up. I don't do that to build me up. I do that to glorify God, and I must remain humble about that. And of course, then he goes on to talk about those who devour the widow's houses, right? And we know of people, a lot of these televangelists who've taken advantage of people, and people in the mainline denominations who've taken advantage of people at the end of their lives to raise money for their own particular churches. And it's always a positive thing. Even the prayer book mentions leaving of your substance for the support of the ministry of the church. God bless you for that if you can. But to be devouring widows' houses, obviously not. But then he goes in to talk about this widow who's throwing in the mite, the farthing, right? The 2 widows' mites. And what, in fact, he talks about in this is he says that, you know, the rich people are just kind of giving out of their extra. But this woman is giving sacrificially. And of course, the biblical model for giving is what? It's a tithe. It's the first 10%, whether you are filthy rich or whether you're poor. It's the first 10% goes back to the Lord because he's allowing you to keep the other 90%. But, you know, in this model of them giving in the temple and paying for in the temple, she's making a sacrificial gift of love because of her love for the Lord. But here's where I want to jump. So remember that chapters and verses actually were added much later, right? They're a medieval invention that the Bibles didn't have chapter 12, chapter 13, chapter 14. They had the text, and I've been told that what happened was that they would say, today's reading is from John's Gospel, starting about midway through with the story of the Good Samaritan, and then he would start reading, okay? So, but chapters and verses were added to make it even. But the problem is that the chapters and verses don't necessarily begin and end the story. So we had this last part that we had Jesus just now, where he said that For all they did cast in their abundance, but of her want cast in all that she had, even her living, right? So cast it into the beauty of the temple and for the treasury for the temple. But then the next verses, chapter 13 goes here. And as they went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. In other words, look how beautiful this building is. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Right? So wait a second. So what if that's a part of the lesson beforehand, right? This widow's putting in, and yet even despite she's putting in this great sacrifice, and the rich are putting in, the temple itself is going away, because the reason for the temple was for the ritual sacrifice of animals for the propitiation of sin, right? To pay the price of sin, which ultimately is just a symbol. But of course, Jesus Christ is the true and living temple. He even says to tear down this temple, meaning his own body. So obviously, if we add those two verses at the end, it does kind of twist it for us a little bit, make us think a little bit broader. That is, God bless this woman for giving, but in the end, it's not about the place. It's about Jesus Christ. It's about the faith. So anyway, today is Wednesday. We have 12:15 Holy Communion service, and well, actually, we've got a conflict at 5 o'clock. So no evening prayer live stream, but I hope you'll pray it at home. And may God bless you.